Hello everyone. So let's continue with the transaction. Transaction. So transaction is what? It is a set of logically related operations. Set of logically related operations. It is set of logically related operations to perform unit of work. To perform unit of work. Right? To perform the unit of work. So uh, such as process in operating system. Example, process in operating system. So process भी क्या है एक unit of work होता है, right? So here transaction we can say it is set of logically related operations to perform the unit of work, right? And example is we can say process. Process is process in operating system that is behaving like a transaction, right? So assume that this is database, bank database, and here there can be the transaction T1, T2, T3, and so on. There may be the transaction. So these are the transactions done to transfer the amount from A to B, right? So these may be the transaction of transferring the amount from A to B. राइट सो ए से क्या करना है बी में कुछ ट्रांसफर करना है कुछ अमाउंट्स को ट्रांसफर करना है तो उसके कॉरस्पॉन्डिंग क्या हो सकते हैं दीज में बी द ट्रांजेक्शंस नाउ अज्यूम दैट ए कंटेनिंग 100 rupees and B containing 200 rupees, right? In that case, we want to transfer 50 rupees from A to B, 50 rupees from A to B. Now here amount is 50 and here amount is 250 after performing this transaction. Okay, so here there may be the operations like just a minute. Like initially read of A, इनिशियली यहाँ पे ए ने क्या किया रीड किया एंड गोट दैट माई अमाउंट इज 100 rupees आफ्टर आफ्टर दैट ए इक्वल टू ए माइनस 50 तो ए ने क्या किया ए में से 50 माइनस किया और इसको क्या कर दिया राइट कर दिया राइट ऑफ ए राइट तो ए में से क्या हो गया 50 डिडक्ट हो गया और उसके बाद क्या किया गया रीड किया गया बी को तो रीड ऑफ बी and after that b equal to b plus 50 बी में 50 ऐड कर दिया और फिर क्या कर दिया राइट कर दिया बी को राइट सो हियर इट इज राइट ऑफ बी ओके सो दिस इज व्हाट ए सेट ऑफ ट्रांजैक्शंस or we can say single logical unit of work. Single logical unit of work. It is the single logical unit of work, right? So this read operation is nothing but a IO operation, input output operation, and here this deduction from A to 50 rupees, right? Deduction 50 rupees from A. This is what operation performed by CPU, right? And here write of A. This is the again IO operation. Read of B. Here it is IO operation, and this one is the CPU operation, right? So this one is the CPU operation. So till this part, is it clear to all? Okay, so here this is what a single transaction, let me say T1, right? So in this case, CPU is idle more time. CPU is idle more time. So we are moving towards the concurrent transaction, right? Concurrent transaction means more than one transaction that can be executed at the same time. More than one transaction executing at the same time. So you can think like these are two transactions. This is transaction T1, this is transaction T2, and here it is performing the IO operation, right? In that case, transaction T2 is performing the CPU operation, and when it is performing the CPU operation, here it is performing the, or it is not performing any operation, and whenever it is performing CPU operation, it may be that it is performing the IO operation, and when it is performing CPU operation, when it is performing CPU operation, here it is not performing any operation, right? So in case of concurrent operation, sometimes CPU is performing, sometimes it is performing the IO operation, then another transaction that will perform the CPU operation, and whenever it is performing the IO operation, it will perform the CPU and CPU operation, then IO operation, or sometimes it is idle also, right? So this is the way of a concurrent transaction. Is it clear to all? ओके, सो मैंने कहा कि ये ट्रांजैक्शन T1 है और ये ट्रांजैक्शन T2 है। जब T1 क्या कर रहा है, आईओ ऑपरेशन परफॉर्म कर रहा है, तो T2 क्या परफॉर्म करेगा, इट विल परफॉर्म द सीपीयू ऑपरेशन। And when it is performing the CPU operation, it may be that it is idle, it is not performing any operation. And when it is performing the IO operation, it is performing the CPU operation. And when it is performing CPU operation, it may be that it is performing IO operation or not performing any operation. But we can perform the multiple transactions simultaneously, right? That is also known as concurrent transactions. So if there is a concurrent transaction, there is a chance of inconsistency, right? So in case of concurrent transaction, if it is concurrent transaction, there is possibility of inconsistency, right? If it is concurrent transaction, there is possibility of inconsistency. So we require the concurrency transaction. We require the transaction concurrency management protocols, right? We require the transaction concurrency management protocol. Transaction concurrency management protocols. So transaction concurrency management protocols की क्या आएगी, requirement आएगी. So now we'll discuss about some of the properties, that is acid properties. Acid properties. So acid properties, we can say A stand for atomicity, A stand for atomicity, C stand for consistency, C stand for consistency, I stand for isolation, I stand for isolation, and D stand for durability. D stand for durability. So firstly, we'll start with acid property. Property. Okay, that atomicity. But एटॉमिसिटी स्टार्ट करने से पहले ये देखते हैं कि एसिड प्रॉपर्टी क्यों फॉलो करते हैं, why we apply the acid property. So to pursue the integrity or maintain the consistency, it is applied to pursue integrity or maintain consistency. To maintain consistency, right? And now we'll discuss about the atomicity. So what is atomicity? So in case of atomicity, transactions will be executed all the operations or execute none of the operations. Transaction transaction should execute all operations including including commit or execute none of them, or execute none of them, or execute none of them. Means we can say transaction either it should be 100% or it should be 0%. या तो ट्रांजेक्शन क्या रहेगा 100% या फिर ट्रांजेक्शन क्या होना चाहिए 0%, नॉट इन बिटवीन, right? This is and another thing, who is the responsible person for atomicity? So responsibility, we can say uh, that transaction manager is responsible for atomicity. Transaction manager is a responsible person for this atomicity, right? And transaction manager is what it is a software. So this is about the atomicity. Is it clear to all? Okay, fine. So after atomicity, next one is the consistency. Next one is consistency. So consistency means correctness. So transactions that should be correct, right? Transactions should be correct, and who is the responsible person for this one? Responsibility किसकी रहेगी? So user or programmer is responsible for this one. User or programmer. User or programmer that is responsible for this one. Okay, this is about the that consistency. Next is isolation. Next one is isolation. Isolation, we can say each transaction must be executed. Each transaction must be executed. Each transaction must be executed without knowing without knowing what is happening with other transactions. What is happening with other transactions. What is happening with other transactions. And who is the responsible person? Responsible person is concurrency control manager. Concurrency control manager. So concurrency control manager is responsible for the isolation. ओके, तो क्या मतलब होता है इसका आइसोलेशन का मतलब हुआ अम, कि दूसरा ट्रांजैक्शन क्या कर रहा है ऐसे, मतलब दूसरे ट्रांजैक्शन क्या कर रहा है वो मैटर नहीं करेगा, राइट। ईच ईच ट्रांजैक्शन मस्ट एग्जीक्यूट without knowing what is happening with other transaction, right? That is what isolation. And last one is the durability. Durability. So transaction should be able to roll back. Transaction should be able to roll back. Transaction should be able to roll back or recover under any case of failure. Under any case of failure. Under any case of failure. It is maintained by recovery manager. Recovery manager means transaction should be able to roll back or recover under any case of failure. वो क्या हो सकता है? It may be the hardware failure, it may be the software failure, right? Hardware और software failure कोई भी failure है. It may be the disk failure, right? So disk failure अगर क्या होगा तो क्या करेंगे? Will apply the RAID implementation, right? तो RAID implementation से क्या कर लेंगे? रिकवरी कर लेंगे. Okay, what is the abbreviation for RAID? That is a redundant array independent disk. Independent disk. This is what RAID. Okay, so these 4 points are clear to all. Atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. Okay, fine.